everybody, and welcome to the Nerdy Dad Bodcast. My name is Levi Bullard, and this is the 4th episode, and we're going to talk about how to build your first town. I got most feedback so far about wanting to learn how to dungeon master, how to get started, and how to learn those tips and tricks. So we're going to start there with what I think is the easiest way to start learning how to world build, which is starting with a town. Doesn't have to be anything specific. It could be literally 6 buildings. But what you want to focus on is making sure that there's a reason, there's a theme, there's a cohesive unit behind this. And most of the time, you'll find that is brought together by its name. Now, the name is not the first thing that I recommend you doing, because for me, it is the hardest thing for me to do. For a lot of people, I find that naming theirs is the hardest thing for them to do. But usually you'll also find that once you kind of construct your city, the name might just come to it. Or you might just have to do a random name generator. That's what I've done for quite a bit of my world. And it's about the only thing in my world that actually is purely random. Another way to help with the name situation and to build upon your town is, are there any geographical spots around that are of interest? Are there any mountain ranges, deserts, rivers, or water sources of any kind? In this type of a world where we don't have underground aqueducts and things like that, we don't have pipes bringing, water to towns. How do they get their water? Where does that water source come from? Geographical locations and points of interest also might help you guys if you're interested in trying to name your town. As in, if you're at the base and butted up against the Talon Mountains, you might be Talon City. Now, that's not always the case. I do have one of my towns that's name is Redwater because of the water running through the river. And that's awesome and very unique and can play into the world, but don't think that's a necessity either. Most of what I tell you today is not required, but I think will be the easiest way to learn how to build a town. And building a town is the very beginning and key to learning how to build cities, the worlds. I feel it definitely helps to start smaller. Now, why are these people here? That's the big question. Why is this town even in this spot? And sometimes you'll get it where people are just there because they wanted to be there. Maybe they were trying to get somewhere else and they just couldn't get past the mountains, or it looked too daunting. What if the Donner Party never tried to cross and just stayed in the middle of the US? Maybe they would have set up a town there, and I'm sure there are people who did. So think about, why is your town in the location that it is in? And is there anything that could affect that? Is there something that would make them move? Or is this a really advantageous spot that now they're hunkered in and they're not changing? My favorite thing when it comes to towns or cities isn't what's in it, it's what's not in it. Because the look on your player's face when they arrive into town, beaten and bruised, and they say, all right, I want to go to the blacksmith to get my armor replaced, or my weapon broke during this last fight. Oh, we don't have a blacksmith here. No, we are a peaceful town. We only sell brooches and wands that only cast prestidigitation for those who don't have magical ability. But you see how that can be very crazy and unique to your players when something that is in a town normally, almost in every single town, isn't there. What if they didn't have any farms, or they didn't have leaders? It was just a hodgepodge of people living together. That would definitely give you a lot of role-playing, information and ideas. It kind of brings it into, are you missing any businesses? That tells you what businesses are there. And then with those businesses, which ones are important enough to keep track of, and who are the important people in those towns, in those businesses. You might want to talk to their families and, find out more about that. So it's good to have a couple extra NPCs or random names ready. I don't like to name all of my characters, but those notable ones I will. And then I'll try to get one or two family members, which honestly is even easier because then you only need a first name. You don't need to come up with their last name already because you have it. Now, that kind of ties us all into my biggest factor and probably one of the biggest things that's going to affect your world from building this town, which is what is its relations with its neighbors. That neighboring town of Scudfolth, what are they at war with them? Have they been feuding for 300 years? Um, are they wealthy in trading? Do they rely heavily on Scudfolk to supply their food or their fish or their oxen? There's always certain ways you can find to be. Why are these people even talking to these guys? Because in a lot of these worlds, wilderness is dangerous. Traveling between towns is not safe. So there has to be a very good reason for people to do that. And for people to establish trade routes or to go and visit another town is kind of unheard of usually. I mean, and I'm talking usually, you don't have to follow this exact model for your world. And I'm sure there's some where the wilderness is probably safer than the cities. But that's the way that I feel your towns usually impact your world on a whole.
Alright, so we got Inkarnate.com, which is what I use to create my maps. But you don't have to. You could use something as simple as paint, or you could just draw it on your own. Maps do not have to be even 100% accurate, they just have to portray what you're trying to do, especially as a town map, because your players aren't going to be walking through this town map, so it doesn't have to be 100% accurate. Just give them the basic concept. So we're going to start and we're going to do everything we can that you would have in paint. So let's just grab a basic color, brown. Let's do it a little bit bigger than that. Now we got a road. Let's find a water source. Got a pond right there, or a big old lake. Now let's just we're placing houses right around the river because they like their oceanfront property. And then let's go and just pick a random different styles of buildings. They would probably orient it towards the road. You got the tavern, town hall, or church. You got your blacksmith, your lumber mill, your general store, random building, the library. See, realistically, boom, you've got a world right. Boom, realistically, you've got a world right there. Save it, and that's as easy as it is to create a map for your town. And
in conclusion, my 6 topics and my 6 points for building a town and starting your world is the name, it'll come, but still it's very important. What geographical points of interest are around? Where's your water source? Where's your mountains? Are they, why are the people there? You got to think, is there a reason for this town to even be here, or did somebody in history just say, I'm making a town here? Number 4, what businesses are missing? That's going to not only influence what businesses are there, but give you interesting thoughts onto why don't we have this type of a business here? Because if it's a common business like a blacksmith or the tavern, you should probably have a really good reason why your town doesn't have one of those. We bring us to number 5, which is notable people. Seems very important or very obvious to have your notable people down, but some people don't realize what are the notable people. Your mayors, your blacksmiths, your taverns, your 5 or 6 random NPCs so you can plug them in. There's certain people, the king, the mayor, their guard, maybe the second in command, or someone who's trying to usurp them. Notable people are very important to have, but I would also recommend having a list of side names and just being able to plug them in when you need them, because it'll help with their assistants, the court jesters, those little people that help out your notable characters. And then finally, 6th, which is what is your relation with your neighboring towns? Are you at war? Are you at peace? Are you flourishing, working together? Or has there been a slight tension and you're in a Cold War state for the last 30 years? Either way, realistically, it's easy peasy, and you don't have to have more than 6 buildings or a couple names like that. You don't need to have anything complex, because the more towns you'll build, the more your players explore and flesh out and make you learn, the more you're going to be like, oh no, this town has this now.